Did you know there's a mysterious Soviet boxer who left America in ruins with his unparalleled power? Allow me to introduce you to Vyacheslav Lemeshev, one of the best boxers of the USSR. By 1972, at the young age of 20, he did the unthinkable. He captured the Olympic gold, instantly etching his name in the annals of boxing history with golden ink. But it would be shortly thereafter that the world would learn that this young boxer possessed a hidden talent. A single touch of his gloves sent opponents crashing to the canvas, but in his case, fame was his worst enemy. His success represents only the beginning of his story. As he ascended to unimaginable levels at the age of 23, his life took an unexpected turn. Lemeshev entered a brutal spiral that plunged him into absolute tragedy. Welcome. In today's video, I invite you to pay tribute to the champion who captivated millions. The one whose skills left even the most seasoned fighters of his time perplexed. The one whose life led him to collide with a tormenting end. Get comfortable, because this journey into the past, through the life and work of Vyacheslav Lemeshev, begins here. Vyacheslav learned the noble art of boxing thanks to his older brothers. By then, both were fighters. Despite Lemeshev being a thin and unathletic young man, his brothers decided to initiate him into the chaotic art of fists, taking him to his first boxing gym. There, the honorable coach Lev Segalovich recognized him as a talented young man. Despite not looking like a natural athlete, Vyacheslav had a phenomenal reaction capacity. The eyes of an experienced coach immediately noticed this trait in him, making him one of his pupils. The legendary Soviet coach immediately realized that a unique fighter had fallen into his hands, and he spared no effort in helping him polish his technique and develop his athletic condition. Thus, over the years, Vyacheslav was able to develop his characteristic move, a short, right-handed uppercut, with which he would later extinguish the light in the eyes of almost all his opponents. Lemeshev's reaction capacity was so high that it even amazed scientists. They couldn't believe the results of their tests. No other Soviet fighter could react to stimuli as quickly as Vyacheslav. Lemeshev was only 18 when everyone realized they were facing a natural phenomenon. According to his own words, he didn't even have to try to be so deadly with his attacks. He just went with the flow. He sensed it was the right moment, threw the punch, and went back to his corner, calmly realizing that his opponent wouldn't get up again. In 1972, Vyacheslav participated in the adult championship of the USSR. There, he failed even in attempting to enter the top 3, but during his preparation, psychologists noticed an interesting fact. Lemeshev's reflex speed was higher compared to that of any other athlete. As a result, the hero of our story was included in the Olympic team. After a waiting period that Vyacheslav felt was endless, the 1972 Olympics in Munich took place. The Soviet boxer, barely 20 years old, didn't feel quite right. Shortly before the start of the tournament, he fell ill to such an extent that his preparation had to be interrupted. Still, for Lemeshev, it seemed like the championship had been assembled like a Swiss watch. Thanks to his powerful left-right combinations, he reached the semi-finals, where he knocked out one of the favorites of the edition, the American Marvin Johnson.
Видите, что левша американец. Один раз только было, когда смог атаковать Джонсон. Держать дистанцию. А рефери как раз сейчас попросил Джонсона на Лемешева буквально на плечи ему.
Спасение, чтобы атаки... Тот первый удар был как бы звонком.
After this defeat in just 2 rounds, Johnson never entered an amateur ring again. By the way, the notorious promoter Don King closely followed this encounter. Later, he would become an important figure in Lemeshev's arrival in the United States. Publicly, King claimed to hate the Soviet Union, but he recognized them for creating the monster in the ring that Lemeshev emanated. Back to the story. After defeating the American, Vyacheslav reached the final to face a big problem. During the fight with Johnson, he injured his right hand. Still, he entered the battlefield against 25-year-old Rima Virtanen, fueled by the strongest painkillers. The lingering pain in his right hand didn't stop Lemeshev from knocking his opponent down 3 times, just in the first round.
Посмотреть, боксеры говорят, неудобно.
Ну, вот позабить с ног, опрокинуть. Но вот еще одно падение. Знаете, возможно, это самый легкий для него бой на Олимпиаде. 3-е падение. Вот это уже, скорее всего, будет
After this level of brutality, the fight was stopped. While the referee assisted Virtanen, Lemeshev looked fresh and jovial. Calmly, in his corner, he received instructions from his coach. However, it was just a formality. Vyacheslav, at 20 years old, became an Olympic champion. Lemeshev returned home as a star. He had become the youngest fighter in the history of Soviet boxing to win the Olympics. Vyacheslav was often described as a charismatic guy who never refused to give an autograph. He always knew how to bring a smile to people's faces, those around him would say. The bearer of a lush mustache and a Hollywood-worthy smile seemed born to become a star. In fact, he had everything, except the psychological fortitude for the level of attention he began to receive. The burden of fame forced Lemeshev to abandon constant and demanding training. He decided that his natural talent and innate abilities were enough to continue his winning streak. During the same period, he also began to drink. At first, it was occasional, but by 74, drinking had already become a constant in Vyacheslav's life. Olympic medalist Viktor Rakov claimed that at one point, Lemeshev was an icon, but he ended up becoming a monument with drinking problems. He acknowledged that after his victory in Munich, Vyacheslav had reached such a level of popularity that it was impossible for him to walk peacefully down the street. From his lifestyle emerged the confirmation of an important fact. Despite renouncing formal training, Vyacheslav continued to win fights based on his natural talent. There seemed to be no escape from his imposing uppercut for his opponents. In 73, he won the European Championship for adults for the first time in his career. A success he repeated in 75. A year earlier, in 74, he won the national championship. Then he won silver and bronze medals in all union competitions. Yuri Mikhailovich Radonyak, his personal coach, explained that he was such a talented fighter that he was forced to turn a blind eye to regime violations. Still, no one would give him a simple vote of confidence at the 76 Olympics in Montreal to the reigning champion. To decide who would be the representative, a traditional selection procedure was carried out. Lemeshev, like any other, had to fight for the right to participate in the Olympics. Winning 2 battles and losing 1, he was not selected to go to the training camp by decision of the sports committee. Ironically, the selected representative for the USSR would lose in the final against Michael Spinks, a fighter that Lemeshev knew well, as he had defeated him in the past. Months later, it was learned that Vyacheslav fought for many months with an injury to his right hand. It is impossible to be sure of the following data that I will share with you, but, according to one version, given his poor aptitude for training, Lemeshev fought as a southpaw and kept his pain to himself with the help of injections, despite needing urgent intervention. The Union did not do what it really needed to heal. Their status as superpowers did not allow them to send the athlete where they could really help him. The only thing domestic doctors could offer him was constant painkillers to alleviate the pain. This led to the only way to wait for a real improvement, to resign from the sport, fail the selection, and still it was impossible for the injury to heal completely. This was a hard blow for Lemeshev. It was this twist of fate that robbed him of the motivation to train, focused on getting better and better, and by 77 he announced his retirement. Initially, Lemeshev's plan was to become a professional boxer. However, the intricate paths of his existence did not lead him to it. Vyacheslav abandoned the sport and immersed himself in drink. Attempts to return to the ring were in vain. At one point, Lemeshev couldn't even please himself. He was only 27, with a life ahead of him, but from that youthful age, his decline began. He would never return to see himself roaming the heights of boxing glory, and he would become a full-time alcoholic. A year after leaving the discipline, his friends helped him make a business trip to Germany. There he became a coach for a group of troops. But it wasn't a job that benefited the Olympic champion. In Germany, he intoxicated himself so much that he became the laughingstock of restaurants. At just 28, he felt young. That's why he often sparred with his subordinates, something that often didn't end well. Often, the former champion was knocked out even by first-class fighters. In Germany, Lemeshev passed out for the first time, an important warning from his body that he decided not to pay attention to. Therefore, he returned home with a suitcase full of illnesses. By the time he got home, his vision had deteriorated significantly. His kidneys and liver were failing. Soon, problems with brain vessels, psoriasis, and epilepsy appeared. After these afflictions, doctors made a terrible diagnosis: brain atrophy. It was a progressive disease, probably caused by missed shots during his career and so many years of alcoholism. The money he had earned from his fights quickly ran out, and Vyacheslav was forced to find another way to support himself. First, he worked as a driver at pumping stations, then as a gravedigger in the local cemetery. His third wife, Zenaida, took care of him. She really loved and cared for him, but every year Vyacheslav got worse. It was a degenerative process that couldn't be stopped. By 1990, Lemeshev officially declared himself disabled, first with a second degree of limitation, then with a first. He began to suffer from memory loss. He was unable to even meet up with his friends. Vyacheslav was always a friendly man. He knew many jokes and how to tell them. His anecdotes were the best, and his ability to communicate was enviable. He treated everyone on equal terms. Therefore, in his most difficult moments, his friends didn't abandon him. Since his pension and disability made it difficult for him to support himself, they gave him money. Despite being surrounded by love, Lemeshev continued to worsen. By 95, he needed to be hospitalized for a craniotomy. He lasted 8 days in a coma, but managed to come out of it. One of the doctors, after evaluating his tomography, admitted to never having seen such a damaged brain before. By December 95, Lemeshev would return to the hospital. Just 1 month later, he was no longer there. The Olympic champion died like a beggar. Before his death, he was completely blind and was rarely seen outside his apartment. Vyacheslav had everything to become a legend, but burned out as quickly as he rose to fame. During his amateur career, he won 103 fights, contrasting with just 7 defeats. A feat that makes him one of the brightest wasted talents of Soviet boxing. If you've made it this far, I thank you. If you enjoyed the story, remember that there's no better way to support my content than by leaving your like on the video. Did you already know about Vyacheslav Lemeshev? Let me know what you think in the comments.